This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of the Expect Miracles podcast. If you are enjoying the show, subscribe for weekly episodes and be sure to leave us an amazing review. It really helps spread our message. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Kevin Pecca, Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic, and my website, drkevinpecca.com. You can also shoot me an email at drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Today on the Expect Miracles podcast, we have Stu Massengill. Stu is the founder of Finding Direction. He is a national trainer for Tony Robbins and a cancer survivor. He is a master at networking and communicating, which has led him to meet some truly amazing people on his journey. Stu has been involved in the personal growth and self-help world for a while now, and he has learned from some of the best in the business. He gets to travel alongside Tony Robbins. He was also mentored by Bob Proctor. For a living, Stu gets to travel all around the world and speak at all of Tony Robinson's live events. He has inspired thousands of people, and what I love most about Stu's story is he took all the tools he has learned about mindset and personal growth and applied them to his own life to help him beat cancer. Personal development is one of my favorite topics, so it was a joy to be able to sit down with Stu and learn some new skills I could apply to my own life, and I know you can do the same. Please welcome Stu Massengill. Today on the Expect Miracles podcast, we have a very special guest. I'm excited to have him, Stu Massengill. He is out of San Diego, California, and he is a national trainer for Tony Robbins, and he is the founder of Finding Direction. Stu, how are you today?
I am blessed, man. I'm breathing. My heart's beating, air in my lungs. So today's a great day.
What it's all about. Another day above ground, right?
Truly, that's a win.
I dove a little bit into your life story, and it is truly amazing. You've been through a lot. You've overcame a lot. And I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. So thanks for coming down and sitting with us.
Yeah, man. I'm pumped to be here and just grateful to be able to, hopefully give people some wisdom and insights and help people along this journey called life.
So Stu, where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from the Bay Area. So my non-California peoples, that's Northern California. I grew up about 45 minutes east of San Francisco in a small little town and just more or less kind of had, I guess, normal for me, but a pretty regular childhood. I got one brother, two great parents, and, kind of just did all the kid things growing up, playing sports, fooling around, all that fun stuff. So
beautiful. And what were you into growing up?
I definitely went through phases super randomly. I had one phase where I was convinced for the rest of my life I was going to build fireworks for a living.
Really? That is a phase.
Yeah. My parents were like, your fingers might blow off though when you're like trying to put all these chemicals together and you put the wrong one. And I was like, I don't care. Like, fingers are not, fireworks is my thing. And
were you like a pyromaniac? Like I had a little bit of that in me too.
Yeah. I had a phase of pyromaniac where it was like, you take the magnifying glass, you're burning. So I did that for a little bit. That was probably not super long phase, but I would say probably in my younger teens, I started skateboarding.
Nice.
And I'd been snowboarding my entire life growing up. And so for me, that was definitely probably the biggest thing I was into. I would, go skate with friends, go snowboard. And that was kind of, do that, go to school, and then just do whatever else kids do when you're younger. But I would say those are two of the biggest things that I was into was fireworks at one point, which was super random. And then the action sports, that definitely stuck.
What was your mountain of choice up there?
North Star.
North Star.
Yeah, they got a lot of good terrain, really good parks over there. Powder day, when you get a good dump, it's like wonderful. So yeah, North Star was like the go-to. And I grew up going there with my family. We would go, on like a vacation every winter. And so it just kind of became like a second home. And North Star's in Lake Tahoe, which if you have not gone to Lake Tahoe and you're listening to this and you want a miracle, go to Lake Tahoe. That's a miracle on earth.
Absolutely. So Stu, after, skateboarding, everything, did you go to college? Is there something you wanted to pursue there?
Yeah. So I grew up very traditional. You go to school, you get good grades, you get a job, you figure out life. And so I went to San Diego State. That's what brought me down now to Southern California. I live in San Diego now. And I went to school, and that was kind of my plan. And I always kind of dabbled in the entrepreneurship space. I was the kid that sold gummy bears in high school, and then eventually it turned into selling skateboards so I could just skate for free. And then I got to college, and probably the end of my first year, I was introduced to another business opportunity. It was a network marketing company. And then that's when I kind of that was probably 8 years ago. And that's when I kind of fully headfirst dove into this entrepreneurship world. And then I ended up dropping out of school for a little bit, pursuing that for a while. It was one of the most incredible opportunities. I talk with a lot of people in college now, and there's this idea sometimes that pops up of taking a gap year, or taking a leave of absence for a year. And for me, I took 3.5 years off, and then I came back, and then I took another half a year off. I took as long as you could possibly to get through it. But for me, it was one of the best experiences to leave school and just experience life.
What did you do with that 3.5 time frame? You traveled? What did you do?
Yeah. So I was introduced to this network marketing company. And for those not familiar with the industry, essentially in a nutshell, what it is there's a larger company that produces the products, they manufacture it, they do all kind of the back end. And then what you do is basically, rather than having to put all the energy into creating the product and building it and getting all the testing done, you are basically just a marketer for them. And the more effectively you can market this product, the better income you make. And so I ended up just going full on into that for 3.5 years. And I mean, at one point I was on a plane probably once or twice a week, just traveling all over the country, working with different organizations, different teams. And for me, truthfully, it was an incredible opportunity to build a business for 3.5 years. But really what it exposed me to was personal development. And this idea that I grew up personally, I was the shy, quiet kid growing up. I had an older brother. He was extroverted. He was social. He was the stud. And I was the shy, quiet, introverted sibling that I would have my friends. And then other than that, I just kind of kept to myself. And when I was introduced to this personal development world, it really just exposed me for the first time that you can truly become whatever you want to become. And I experienced that. I wasn't just someone preaching it to me. I experienced the transformation of going from shy, quiet, introverted to loving being around people and having conversations with people in whatever way, shape, or form that was. And that's ever since I was exposed to that personal development for the last 8 or 9 years, I've lived in that world. And I would say in a larger sense, probably been addicted to it because it feels so good to grow for me.
What tools, mentors were you first exposed to with the personal development? Because there's a wide range you can choose from. What were you gravitated towards in the beginning?
I would say the first 2 big mentors I had, one was probably Bob Proctor. And Bob Proctor, have you ever seen the movie The Secret, right? And they talk about law of attraction. He's the old white dude with white hair. No disrespect, Bob. He's a great dude. But I was mentored by him for a little bit in this company that I was with. And he really just dove deep into the philosophy of thoughts become things. And there's this book called Think and Grow Rich. And he would just expand upon that. And so I learned from him, and he was probably one of my first real mentors in the industry. And then I was introduced to Tony Robbins and kind of went to one of his live events. And for me, it was a little bit different because a lot of seminars or things you'll go to, you go there, you sit down for 12 hours or however long it is, and they talk to you, they teach you, you learn, you go home. Versus I went to Tony's, and it was more or less, it was like a rock concert.
Yeah, I've seen that. A lot of energy.
Yeah, you're jumping up, you're dancing, you're doing ridiculous things. And so for me, it was just that energy in that space really took to me. But I would say those 2 are probably, and then I would listen, Jim Rohn was actually another big one.
It's funny. There's so much content on YouTube that I feel like I was personally mentored by Jim Rohn. You can find hours and hours. I mean, you can find all his seminars on YouTube for free. And it's just the world we live in today, information-wise, the sky's the limit. It's unbelievable. People didn't have access to that 20, 30, 40 years ago.
That really is crazy. Yeah. I mean, you think 20, 30 years ago, you had to go
to a seminar.
Yeah. You had to go to the seminar or go read about it. Yeah.
Or you didn't even know these people were out there.
Yeah. I mean, most people probably weren't aware of it. That is a crazy concept.
Stu, what were some of the tools that you really gravitated towards that you still use today? Because there's so much information thrown at you at personal development. And I feel like little things stick with you, you go over it again, and a little bit more stick with you. What were some tools that really stood out to you?
I would say one of the tools that stood with me is state management. And sort of what I mean by that, if you dive deeper into that, Tony teaches this thing, it's called the triad. And it's that there's three things that are always determining our focus in life, more or less. And it's the language that we tell ourselves, it's how we use our physiology, and then it's the meaning that we give things. And so in this triad, it's like, if you're aware of, all right, what am I focusing on, right? What am I speaking to myself? How am I using my body language? What you'll begin to notice is there's patterns that you can predict when you're going to be depressed. You can predict, what do I say to myself when I'm depressed? What do I do with my body language when I'm depressed? What do I focus on when I'm depressed? And then you can start to look at, okay, well, when I'm like, let's say for me, it was an example. Let's say I'm skateboarding. I'm about to go jump down 7 stairs and do this trick. Like right before I'm about to do that, what am I saying to myself? What am I focusing on? And how am I using my body? And it's like, as you start to pick up some of these patterns, you realize that, I mean, anyone that's listening to this, if we said, I'll give you $10 million, there's someone behind a door next to you, they're depressed, what does their body language look like? No one needs to be a genius to know their shoulders are slouched. Their breath is shallow. They're not moving a ton, because we've all been there one time or another. So really the biggest thing I think I got initially was learning how to create states that allowed me to prosper more in life. And notice that, okay, well, if I'm getting into this negative state, let me consciously look at, what's my body doing? What am I saying to myself? What am I focusing on? And then really allowing yourself to change that. Because I think a lot of the times when we get into these sad places or depressed places or places of feeling like we don't know what we can do, or we don't know if we can solve this issue that we're in, a lot of the times unconsciously we're not aware of what's actually going on. But those are 3 of the biggest forces that really determine that.
Now, Stu, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but this is one of my favorite topics. So let's just take the example of you trying to land a skateboard trick that is a little bit out of your comfort zone. What is the self-talk you are trying to tell yourself? Are you saying, I'm the best skateboarder in the world, I'm going to nail this? Or is there more levels to that?
Yeah, no, I would say it's telling myself, I got this, I'm nailing this, I'm making this happen. The focus that I always remember, and this even after skateboarding has turned into a theme that I wasn't even aware I was doing at the time, but the thing I would focus on is riding away from the trick.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Some people, they focus on, oh, I'm going to jump down these stairs and, well, I might eat crap and I might break my arm. Well, if that's what you're focusing on, where energy goes, or where focus goes, energy flows. So those are some of the things that I would focus on. And then body language, I'm a mover. I like to move my body. I'm up. I'm kind of jumping on my toes and heels a little bit to just really like get myself hyped up. And it's interesting, even as we talk about this now, those are massively things that I do in my life now, right? When I want to create something, I'm focusing on what's the end look like, right? In a positive manner. I'm moving my body, I'm shaking it around, and I'm keeping that language of, I got this, I can make this happen. And one thing that's really interesting as we look at COVID, let's just take for an example. And for anyone that, let's say, for example, owns a business, what happened to a lot of people when COVID became is those 3 things, they started to look at, oh man, COVID's here. They focused on business isn't going to be as good, right? The language they told themselves was maybe, I've never been in this place before, so I don't know if I can figure this out. And then their body language, maybe again, shoulders slumped. Now, one of the things that's interesting, I've had I kind of joke around and say I've had a master class in business watching Tony Robbins pivot in this pandemic. And one of the things that I noticed was interesting with him as he shifted in this business is once COVID hit and you kind of go through those different phases of like, first you're angry and you're pissed off. You're like, they're not shutting my business down. Finally, you accept it, right? And eventually you get into this phase of creation. Is that if you're a business owner and you're listening to this, you got to figure out how can you put yourself in that positive state when you crush it in life. And that's where you must come up with ideas from. Because if you come up with ideas in this state of, I don't know if I could do this, I can't make this happen, the answers you give yourself will actually be different than the answers than if you put yourself in a peak state, is what we call it. And so that's one thing I would say even today that's really relevant is for people going through all this craziness with COVID and having to shut their businesses down. And I mean, I'm sure it's affected you in a way as well with your business. And it's like, you got to put yourself in a state that says, I'm going to find a way, I'm going to make a way. And once you find that state, you can really create some beautiful answers on how COVID although there's a lot bad happening, how there actually really can be some beautiful blessings within.
Absolutely. And you yourself are a speaker in front of a live audience. And so it also has been it's been a different year for you as well. So how have you pivoted in that circumstance because you don't have the live audience anymore? You're not selling tickets per se. How do you pivot in that situation?
Yeah, great question. So pre-COVID, to give people a little bit of background, I'm a national trainer with Tony Robbins. What that looks like is traveling 340 days a year, moving cities every 4 months, speaking in front of audiences 5 to 15 times a week, and kind of orchestrating different trainings for different companies of all sizes and shapes. And that's what we did pre-COVID. Now COVID happened. As Tony Robbins, our normal event is 10,000 people in a stadium. And a lot of the speaking I would do would kind of cater towards leading people to that event. And so once COVID hit, the way that we pivoted was rather instantly. We just rather than trying to say, we're going to still get in buildings, we're going to find a way, we're going to do live workshops and live trainings, we more or less pivoted and said, this isn't looking good. Let's find a solution. And so we went all virtual. So for the last, whatever it's been now, 10 months, which seems crazy to say, we've done everything virtual. And one of the most beautiful gifts that we've gotten from it, and again, like I said, COVID, there's some bad things, but there's also some truly incredible things, is because I'm no longer in cities and restricted to the confinements of how far people are away from me, right? Like if I'm in Chicago for a couple of months, I can only get to people, let's say in Chicago, maybe some people in Illinois, maybe some people in other bordering states. But because we're virtual now, I mean, I've had the privilege to work with people in Africa, in UK, in Australia, in probably every state in the country, in the US, with people in Canada, with people in Southern America and South America. And it's been so incredible to see when you do pivot and when you detach yourself from this is how it's always been, there's some incredible things. That's kind of how we've done it. Like there's a saying, I'm going to totally butcher it, and I forget who it's by, but the saying goes something like, in order to thrive in the 21st century, it's not those who are the most intellectual, it's those who can learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I think that's the biggest thing a lot of us have had to do in this world is we've done things so often one way that when they've shifted, we've been so stuck to, well, this is how it is. This is how it's always been. But in order to really succeed and to grow, we got to figure out how can we unlearn and relearn.
Stu, how did you personally go from taking one of Tony Robbins' seminars to being involved in one of Tony's seminars all around the country? Because that's a huge step. It's very impressive, and you don't see that too often. And it definitely takes an extra skill set, an extra form of focus, because there's a lot of people that speak, that do what you do, but there's different levels to everybody in every profession. But how did you get to the level you're at now?
Yeah. So one of my biggest philosophies in life is that through effective communication and networking, you can open any door of opportunity. And what I more or less did is I went through a bunch of different things in my life. I was with that business. I went into action sports for a little bit. And ultimately through just experiencing and trying things in life, I figured out working with people was what I felt is my calling in life. And so because Tony had impacted my life, that's where I went to. I was like, okay, Tony. And so more or less just through using the communication and networks that I'd built over the years, I knew someone who knew someone in the company that knew someone that knew the person that was like hiring for what I do now with Tony Robbins as a trainer. And so I just more or less
connections. Yeah.
Just through my network, met the person that I needed to meet, and then really just like built a relationship with that person, showed them that I obviously have the skills to perform for them. Fast forward now, here we are.
What was that first encounter with like Tony on a personal level when you knew you were going to start working with him? What was that like?
So what's interesting is the first time I met Tony was at church, and I live in San Diego. Tony he lives in Florida. And so usually I go to like a morning, and this is obviously pre-COVID when we can go into places, but usually I would go in the morning. This one day, something happened. I went later, and I'm like at church, and I see this like just giant human, because Tony's like 6'8", he's 6'8", and he's large.
Yeah.
And I see this dude like standing up. We're doing like the worship part, and I'm like, that dude looks like Tony Robbins. And I was like, I'm gonna go sit behind him because like that really looks like him. And sure enough, I sit behind him and I was like, holy crap, like this is him. And at this point, like I had been to some of his events. I went to one of his events in Australia, so I'd seen him at several different events. And I just went up to him after and was just like, thank you, really more or less on like how much you've impacted my life. And one of the craziest things for me was how ridiculously present this man is. What I mean is like now in today's world, it's easier than ever to get distracted by social media, by this, but like there's so many things pulling our attention. But the moment I said one word to him, it was like the only thing in the universe was he and I having this conversation and him genuinely appreciating my thank you. And it's like, this dude probably has this happen thousands of times a day for the last decades. And it just really blew my mind on how present he was. Because I think, again, especially in today's world, it's easy to not be present.
So easy.
Yeah. And so at that point, I don't think I really even had the idea that I was going to work with him. But I've always been so aligned in the character that he has and just the mission that he has and how relentless he is to make sure that he serves people at the highest capacity. Like he has such a high standard for how he needs to show up for his clients. He has such a high standard for life. And I think that's really kind of what pulled me in. And, again, just from even working from him, that presence has stood still and that standard, something that's rubbed off on me where it's like, all right, let's raise our standards.
And Stu, what has traveling done for you in personal growth aspects? Because you are constantly traveling. You took 3 years off to travel. I think I might have read that you've been to a couple places all over the world, correct?
Yeah.
What has that been able to do for you?
I think my favorite thing about traveling is you get put in a place that requires you to just be in that place. And sort of what I mean, like I've traveled a lot throughout the US and for work a lot and for business, 2 different types of traveling. One for work, you're going to a place, you're getting stuff done. And that's one way. I would say my preferred way of travel is for pleasure, for fun. So I've been to, the Philippines, Europe, a couple other different countries. And yeah, I think my favorite thing is like once I get to that place, because I know I'm only there for a week or 2 or 3 weeks or a month, it's like, let me turn off everything else and just be here and embrace this culture and this world and the people here and have conversations and experience life in this place. Because one, I don't know if I'll ever come back to this place. So really let me take in everything about it. And that's been the most beautiful thing for me when it comes to traveling is just embracing the presence of the place. And it started with, I think it was 5 years ago-ish. I booked a one-way ticket to New Zealand and I was like, I'm going. Like,
oh yeah. Talk about this. That you haven't even touched on this part of your story.
Yeah. So yeah, it took a curveball. It did not work out, my friends.
Holy shit. Yes, it did.
Yeah. But it started as we kind of maybe segue out of the travel, but with like, I think it's easy to get caught up in, I want to go travel and see the world, but I don't have anyone to go with me or my friends, they're busy or this friend doesn't have the money or this friend's got kids or whatever. For me, it was just like, all right, like, I know that I'm in control of myself. And if I go, like something cool's got to happen. And worst comes to worst, if it's really bad, I'll just come home. But I always wanted to go to New Zealand. It was a dream of mine since I was born, weirdly. And so that was the first step. And once I went to one place, it was like, all right, I'm going everywhere. Once you get a taste of the travel, it's like that bug they talk about. It's
real.
Vicious. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super real.
Stu, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but you've had a health journey of your own and you've come out the other side of it. And that itself is a miracle. Tell me what that was like for you.
Yeah. So in this New Zealand adventure, right, I'm going to go travel, explore the world, all that good stuff. I went to New Zealand. My plan was to be there for 7 months and 2 days into it.
2 days. Holy cow.
Yeah. 2 days into my 7 months, 2 days before my birthday, I noticed there was like something not right with my body. And so I had a skydive appointment the next morning. So of course I had to go do that. So I jumped out of a plane, then went to the hospital. I was like, I'm not going to die in this plane. Like,
yeah,
I'll be all right. So I went to the plane. It was beautiful. Went to the hospital. And basically after probably like 2 days of tests, because it was a small little hospital in New Zealand, and I don't think they really had like specialists or anything like that. It was just like general medicine. After like 2 days of doing tests, ultrasounds, things like that, they did the like traditional in the movie scene, like sit you down,
By yourself, no family.
Yeah, by myself, no family. And they were like, all right, sir, like you're going to have to get the next flight home. We found, there's some sort of mass and it's either benign, meaning it's nothing, or it could be cancerous. But we suggest you get on the next plane flight home and you go see your doctor and you figure this out. And I'm a ridiculously positive person. And I have a massive belief in my life that everything happens for a reason and it happens for the right reason. So for me, and I think the 3.5 years I dove into personal development massively prepared me for this moment. Like, because if I didn't have that, I might have heard that and been like, holy crap, WTF. But I heard it, and for me, it was just like, okay, like everything happens for a reason. Like, not a real shame or sad or fear. It was just like, all right, this is like supposed to happen. I know I'm not supposed to die. It's not my time yet. This is just supposed to happen. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to get through it. And sure enough, I get home, whatever the plane flight is, 16 hours later, go see my doctor. And after seeing him, he like sits me down again. And he's like, he is the specialist. And he's like, all right, Stu, like, basically like you have testicular cancer and that's what this is. And like, now we need to kind of go through the protocols and procedures to not make you have cancer anymore. And one side note, I would just say to all my guys listening to this, like check your equipment to just be super vulnerable and open and honest. Basically, one of my soldiers swelled up to the size of an egg.
Wow.
To just be, open here. And so make sure you're checking yourself. And if something like that happens, go see a doctor. I was fortunate enough, I think, to catch it early-ish enough. They ended up doing an oreectomy. And then after you have your surgery, they constantly monitor you with like CT scans and MRIs. And they did a CT scan and they noticed there was a mass 3 millimeters large in my stomach. And I guess testicular cancer can spread to your stomach through your lymph nodes. And they basically were like, yeah, like this isn't like a common thing that happens with testicular cancer, but sometimes it'll spread to your stomach. And if that's the case, we need to do this surgery. It's called an RPLND. It stands for retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. And long story short, they cut you open from your pecs, so like your chest, down to your pubic bone. So I don't know, 1.5 foot. They cut you open and they go along your main artery and vein and they take out lymph nodes.
So that was the case. It spread to the stomach.
It did. So yeah. So they took out 23 lymph nodes, 5 were cancerous. And I mean, I just feel blessed that one, I had good care. Like I had some really good doctors that were working on me, that they caught that. I mean, the question did come into play of like, are we going to do this surgery or not? Like, because it's a big surgery. So it's like, it's not something you casually just say, let's just do this and do it to do it.
You got to definitely weigh out your options.
Yeah. So we did go through it and do the surgery. And I just feel extraordinarily grateful that I was able to catch it early enough that it didn't spread further than that. And my cancer, it wouldn't react to chemotherapy. So I didn't ever do chemo, which I guess I'm also grateful for because I have friends that have done that and it's a gnarly process. But they just removed everything surgically from me. And now I'm 3.5 years from that, almost 4 years to the day, actually.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you,
Unbelievable.
man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so almost 4 years from that now, and I'm cancer-free. I don't really know all the lessons that I've learned from it. I think it'll continue to unfold in my life, and I'll continue to see why that happened. But yeah, I definitely feel extraordinarily fortunate that I was able to catch it early enough to not have it spread.
Absolutely. And I think just waking up on a bright, sunny day, feeling good, feeling healthy, feeling alive, like that's probably just enough for you. Like that's probably everything. Because it's like, if you didn't have an experience like that, you wake up, it's just another day, but you have something like that happen to you, you really start counting all your blessings and your health, and damn, it feels good to be alive. Southern California in the sunshine. Life is good.
Yeah. Every morning I have a practice I do, a couple different things I do in the morning, but one of them is practicing gratitude. And every single morning, religiously, I write down 10 things I'm grateful for, 5 that are in my life, and then 5 things I want to create, but I write it in the present tense as if I've already created it. And in the 5 things that I write down that I have in my life, I'll write down a combination of really big things. So it's like, I'm so happy and grateful that in business, we just accomplished this goal. And then another one will be, I'm so happy and grateful that I have air in my lungs, or that my heart's beating. Like my heart is on there almost every single day. And it just reminds you of all the little things that we have in life that we can be so grateful for. And I'm a firm believer that when you start with gratitude, that just it just illuminates every other part of your life.
Absolutely. I do the same thing. Now, one of my questions next was is it a problem to be repetitive? Because there's like 2 or 3 things that like I'm writing down every day and I'm like, all right, this is getting a little corny, but it's what I'm grateful for. Is there a problem with being like saying that writing down, if you're writing down 6 or 7 things, 3 of those things always on your list?
No, I don't think so. I'm very similar. For the 5 things I write down, there's probably 1 or 2 that show up all the time. And maybe like a third one that shows up, like on a weekly basis. Like there's definitely overlaps for the ones that I have in my life. And then for the things I want to create in my life, I would say for that, probably 4 out of the 5 are always the same every single day. It's like goals I have for business, goals I have for my life, dreams that I have. And it's just every single day reaffirming to my unconscious mind. I started with, I'm so happy and grateful now that and then I fill in the blank. Like one I put every single day is, I'm so happy and grateful now that I own a lake house on Lake Tahoe. And that's like a vision I have. That's a dream that I want to create in my life. And so by every single day reaffirming that in my unconscious mind, I'll continue to do that until I have the house. And I promise you, back in a handful of years, I will have the house.
And Stu, do you have a night routine as well or no?
I don't really have a night routine.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
I bought a great little book, the 5-minute journal, and I feel bad because I always leave the night routine blank. I'm really good at the morning one, but I'm just curious to see if the night routine was a part of your daily.
Yeah. One thing that I'll do sometimes, this is not as common of a practice, maybe like once a week I'll do this, and usually I'll do it when I don't have the best day. And meaning like if I have a day where I have some goals and I didn't quite get those goals or something didn't quite go the way I want, our brain as humans, what I've noticed is if we have 10 things we want to do and we do 9, we crush 9 and we mess up on 1, our brain tends to go to, oh, I could have done that better. I could be, all those things. And so those 10 things, for example, 9 of them could be really small. And that 10th one could be a little bit bigger. But sort of what I'm getting at is at the end of the day, I'll ask myself, what were 3 things that I just crushed it at today? Because one concept I've learned in life is that success breeds success and failure can't breed success. So if you have something you want to create in your life and you did 9 things right and 1 thing's wrong, but you go into the next day holding on to that failure, that's not going to allow you to build success off that. So I'll at the end of my day say, what were 3 things I crushed it at today? It could be, man, I cooked an amazing dinner with my girlfriend and like I crushed that. And it could be, I went on a walk today. And one other random thing, big or small, but that allows me to take, even if it's just the smallest little wins and carry that into tomorrow. So tomorrow I show up and I just crush it even harder.
Stu, you've been around some very high vibrational people. And is there a trend or something, like 1 or 2 things you notice about these people that they have in common that you can like extract from them?
I love the word vibration first and foremost, because I think that's real. Like we're all on a certain type of frequency. Those are some of the things I learned from Bob Proctor as well, is it's like we're on frequencies. And yeah, so I like that. 2 or 3 things that I picked up. 1 is a sensational hunger to be better, to do more, to show up, to just a hunger for life, I would say is one thing. And then another thing that I've noticed is curiosity and having this general curiosity just for life. Let's say you own a business and it's not just curiosity towards your business and how you can grow that. It could be like just in a conversation you're having with someone in a grocery store, like a genuine, real sincerity and curiosity on like, what does this person do? What do they know? Like having this approach that everyone in life knows something that I don't know and is better at something than me. And so having this curiosity, whether it's in business, whether it's with our relationships, whether it's with our health, but just continued curiosity that just like this childlike curiosity that just doesn't go away. So I would say those are 2 of the biggest things, is hunger and curiosity.
And for me, the conversation we're having is a lot of it comes back to being present, because I mean, it's such a cliched thing to say, like be present, be where your feet are. But like when you are present and realizing that you need to be present, it's a game changer. It's your whole life almost changes.
Yeah. And it's easier now than ever to not be present. So I think you hit it on the head. Even if you could just like put a sticky note somewhere that's just like, be present, or like, just like little reminders that you can put so that each day you because the present's all we have, right?
Absolutely. Stu, I want to talk a little bit about more what you're doing now. What is Finding Direction? Why did you start something like that? Is that a side gig from what you do with Tony? What is this?
Yeah, so it's a business I do aside from what I do with Tony, my own business. And where it birthed, where it started was after I left that original business that I was in for 3.5 years. I left it because of some changes in my heart. And once I left it, I went from this place of living the cliche of never work a day in your life if you love what you do to why am I here? What's my purpose? What am I doing on this planet? Like just total loss, like just felt lost in this world. And it was like one of the most painful things I've ever been through. It was more painful than all the cancer stuff I went through. And so for years, I tried to figure out why am I here? What's my purpose? And I went through all these different things to ultimately get to where I am today, where I live. And I say this hopefully a way that comes off authentically, not inauthentic. Hope get that right. But like I'm really happy with the life that I've created for myself and I feel fulfilled. And I think fulfillment is a huge thing in life. And I lived a lot of my life when I pursued business unfulfilled. And so basically when I went in this couple of years of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, I had this realization that like, holy crap, I'm not the only person that's asked this question to myself. And that there's other people out there that are going, I don't know what I want to do with my life. You know, let's say in college and you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, or you just graduated or you've been in the workforce for a couple of years and you're like, this isn't really what I feel like I'm called here to do. And so that's when Finding Direction was born out of there's other people suffering from this, going through this. And I kind of think that in philosophy, we've taken on this approach that it's okay to be dissatisfied with what you do. Where, you know, it's like, oh, what do you do for work? And you're like, oh, you do this. And they're like, oh, well, do you like it? And you're like, nah, but like it's work. And it's like, I mean, you look at the statistics, we work, it's like more than half of our life is work.
Especially in America.
Yeah, right. And it's like, I'm a believer you should do something that you wake up and you have to like pinch yourself and be like, wow, this is like life that I live, that I've created for myself, because you can create that type of a life, right? If you have the hunger, if you have the curiosity. And so Finding Direction, we kind of have two pillars. One, we got a podcast called Finding Direction, and that's all about figuring out how people that live fulfilling and successful lives, how they did it, and kind of picking apart their life, having people on and really just diving into their life. And then the second pillar that we have is Finding Direction University, and that's more of a hands-on approach. That's more of people that are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, but they don't want just the free content from the podcast, but they want like actual guidance in this process. And a lot of the people we work with in that are kind of the people I touched on, people that are in college, that are just about to get out of college and go to the real world, or even people that have graduated and are kind of a couple years into the mix wondering, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing?
You can probably help out 45, 50-year-olds that are just been doing what they're doing for too long. They know it and they want to change direction. It sounds like it's for everybody.
Yeah, it's not confined to anybody, right? I think there's people of all age, walk, life, size, shapes, wake up and go, man, I'm not happy. So we want to help people. We want to help people shift from that and really live a life that you love.
Yeah, I had a 50-year-old guy in my chiropractic class, and he was one of the most happiest people to be in the room. It's never too late to start, and it was awesome going into class, going to lab, working on people, and just seeing this guy's face. Like he was a 20-year-old kid again, just so excited for his new job, his new career, and it was great to see.
I love that.
Stu, where can people find Finding Direction online, all your social media platforms, everything like that?
Yeah. So I would say probably the best thing, we have a free resource people can take advantage of. We've had probably about 100 people on the podcast, give or take. And just from that, from my own experiences, we've learned that there's commonalities, right, on how people got to where they are. And so we have this document. If people want to get it, it's a free resource. It's called 3 Steps to Finding Direction. And they can go to findingdirectionuniversity.com/3steps. Again, that's findingdirectionuniversity.com/3steps. And you'll get our free, it's kind of like an ebook called 3 Steps to Finding Direction. And that can give, more or less anybody clarity on what does that life look like that really lights you up and how do you get there?
And is there like personal one-on-one sessions that people do? Is it group? Is it like, how does it work?
Yeah, so we're all group. So
Very cool.
We're launching our next group in about mid-February. So depending on when this comes out. And so if you wanted to do that, I would say get the ebook or shoot us an email. Once you get the ebook, obviously we'll send you an email. You can respond. But I would say that's probably the best way to get in touch if you do want really some hands-on help.
And how does that work? Is it Zoom? Is it in person? Is it what does that look like in February?
Yeah. So it's a 6-week long process. And basically it's a program. We bring a bunch of different people in, obviously all people trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. And over the 6 weeks, it's a culmination of online modules where we have different studies, different things you'll go through, different lessons. And then once a week, we meet as a group and we do different things each week, but they're all around how do we come together as a group, as a community, and make sure that we can figure out what we want to do with our life and make it a reality in our life.
Beautiful. Stu, at the end of every episode, I like to ask all my guests, what is one piece of advice that has really resonated with you over the years? Could be absolutely anything that you would like to gift the audience.
Yeah, I would say the biggest silver lining piece of advice I've received was from one of my mentors probably 8 or 9 years ago when I first kind of got into the real space of entrepreneurship. And he said, successful people do what's uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable, and that's why they're successful. And throughout my life, I've noticed where I've grown the most is when I approach an opportunity that is going to be so uncomfortable, but I know it's going to make me grow. And that's why it's uncomfortable, because it's out of my comfort zone. I've had some things in my life, opportunities, things to pursue that I know is part of my calling on this earth, but it's uncomfortable because I haven't done it yet. And sometimes I'll be in this place of like feeling like I'm literally going to throw up because I'm like, this is so uncomfortable, but I know I need to do this to like grow, to become the best version of myself that I can be. And I've just learned to embrace that uncomfortability. So anytime that comes, that just pops back into my head. Successful people do what's uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. That's why they're successful. And then it's like, take action.
Beautiful. And I just want to ask you, is there like 2 or 3 books that you recommend that you would also like to, that have helped you?
Yeah, I would say 2 books. One is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That is the most prolific book on people I've ever read. It literally changed my life. I would listen to it on repeat because I was like this shy person that didn't know how to have conversations. So I was like, I'm going to just devour this book until it becomes me. So that's one of my favorite books. And I would say another book, and this can kind of help people in that process, whether you're figuring out your life or, you know, you got a kid that's figuring out their life or a family member, a friend or whatever. There's this book, it's called The Defining Decade. And it's by this woman named Dr. Meg Jay. And it's all about how your 20s is like your defining decade for your life. And so that's a really good book as well. I'd say those are 2, there's many books, but those are 2 good ones.
Beautiful. Stu, thank you so much for coming on the show. Wealth of knowledge in the self-help field. It looks like you're doing great things, big things. I wish you nothing but the best in 2021. Seems like it's going to be a big year for you. Thank you for coming on the show, laying out all the cards on the table, and sharing your story. It was amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kevin. And thank you to everybody for tuning in today and jumping in our conversation. We appreciate you and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.